Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Laymen Daily Show. How is everyone? You know what? I actually didn't have the chat ready, and I'm like, how's everyone in the chat? Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in today. So the other day, or yesterday, I did a little bit of the Phil Spencer interview, but the more I've looked at it, the more I thought, you know what? It's probably worth doing this again. Okay, chat's ready now. I thought it was ready. It was worth doing it again because it's a 40-minute interview, right? There's a whole chunk about Activision and going into depth about Starfield. So I wanted to talk about it, and this is going to be a different type of show. Usually I do multiple stories and we kind of go through it, but this one is a bit more chilled. Going to be a bit more. Let's just go through the big chunk of when he talks about Activision, about Redfall, and I'm just going to let it play. All right, I'm going to stop it where I feel like I want to talk about certain things. But the reason I want to do this is because I honestly think this is probably the most important interview Phil's ever done. And if he is let go in the next 6 months, 12 months, or whatever it is, if he can't rectify the situation, I think a lot of people will look at this and see this as a major turning point. So let's get into it. Let's get to the drop, and let's do it. All right. How's everyone in the chat? Victor, hello, good sir. Hello, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in today, man. I appreciate you. I'm going to turn off all these buttons. All the buttons are off now. Because when I go like this, all the buttons would play again and then all the sounds would play. We don't want that to happen today. Yaxi, greeting from Puerto Rico. How are you, my friend? Thanks for tuning in, man. El Bredo, it's amazing hearing you again from Twitch. Thank you, man. I appreciate you. All right, guys, let's tune in. Let's just let's start. Let's see how Phil's doing today, huh?
In the middle, if you're watching or if you're listening, it's the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, joining the XCast today. Phil, we'll start with you. What up, homie? How are you?
Truth be told, I've had easier couple of weeks. It'll be a good discussion today. I'm always happy to come on, talk to XCast. You guys do an amazing job talking to the community, keeping it real. So it's an honor to be on with you guys.
I think that's a really good way that he sets it up. That was the moment where I'm like, okay, we may get a different interview here. You know, a rough couple of weeks. You know how many CEOs come on, they're like, I'm doing fantastically. Oh my God. We're kicking goals here, folks. We're kicking goals. So for Phil to actually start like that, I think that's setting the tone here big time. Now, there's a bit of like an intro thing, but we'll get straight to the first question. Yeah, but for him to actually start like that, we're seeing real Phil here, real Phil here. And as you saw yesterday, we very much did see real Phil.
With Phil Spencer, it's going to be a fun time together. Phil, let's just jump right into it. And it's a tough way to start this episode. It's my birthday this week, and I didn't want to have to do it like this. But Phil, it's been a tough week in the Xbox universe. As you know, of course, the CMA kind of blocking our acquisition of Activision Blizzard King, and Redfall coming out to poor reviews at the launch. Let's start off at the top. Phil, let's talk about the CMA and, of course, this Activision Blizzard acquisition. How are you feeling about this? What should be the overall mindset for Xbox gamers when we look at this after months and months of conversation?
Oof, that's a way to start, isn't it? It's like, well, let's talk about all the shit that's gone wrong for the last week or two. It's just been absolutely decimating to Xbox, to your career, Redfall, Activision. It's all just terrible. So, Phil, just talk a bit about that. That's the first question we want to throw out at you.
Yeah, we remain confident. Obviously, the news from the CMA, which for those not tracking all this, is the United Kingdom's regulatory board on acquisitions to block the acquisition. We'll be appealing that. That's our plan. We continue to work with the European Union. We'll continue to work with the FTC. I think there are like 14 jurisdictions all up. We're working on approval. I think we have 9 approvals so far. But the CMA decision was disappointing. I've been talking to that group for coming up on a year. They've defined a market of cloud gaming that, in my mind, doesn't really exist yet today. But they have a point of view that maybe we have a lead in a market that is just forming, and that this content could somehow prohibit others from competing
I find that interesting, right? Because in a marketplace, the gaming marketplace where Xbox isn't really competing in anything, the CMA is like, we feel like you may be, you might be able to compete in this space, and we're not really comfortable with that. Okay, so we know that you're not really competing in any space, but when it comes to cloud gaming, we're not comfortable you having any sort of competitive edge here because you don't need it or anything, But like I do understand, of course, what they're saying there. It is an emerging market, and it is going to be a big space in the future, absolutely. But for them to come out and seemingly, surprisingly come out and say, you know what, it's not going to be about Call of Duty, it's about cloud, which I've covered in a couple of episodes prior. I think that was surprising for everybody. And I truly wonder if they're actually going to be able to win this whole battle. As you said, 9 out of the 14 have said yes, but the major ones haven't, right? The major ones haven't. So for Phill to continue to fight the good fight here, as I've said in the previous streams, I don't know if they're going to be able to make this work. I personally see this maybe that they're flogging a dead horse now. The UK government has given the CMA even more powers to try and fight this and give larger fines and pass their decisions faster than before. So I think that's going to be tough, man.
In that market. But we'll appeal. We stay on it. The company remains very, very committed. We think Activision Blizzard King is not our strategy, but it is an accelerant for our strategy. So we're still heads down and working through regulatory.
I am pleased to hear that, of course, as a big fan of many of those gaming franchises over there. I'm looking forward to seeing this deal go through, and I'm glad to hear that you and the team are still hard at work at making this happen. It has been a long road. It's been a tough road to talk about it each and every single week, kind of falling apart, but
it's always the Brits, isn't it?
Falling apart.
We're always the fly in the ointment. we got
Classic Brit, throwing his Brit here. It's always a Brits, mate. It's all the bloody Brits, eh?
Of course, we got to move on to the next one. Phill, of course, Redfall has released from Arcane Austin, and it's been a tough release week for that, coming out to low reviews and a lot of disappointment from many fans. Can you talk about that? What is your thoughts right now as we head into the first week of this game being out?
Yeah, man, I'll start. I'll hit Redfall, but I'll just say all up. There's nothing that's more difficult for me than disappointing the Xbox community. I've been a part of it for a long time. I obviously work on Xbox, head of the business, have a lot of friends, get a lot of feedback. And just to kind of watch the community lose confidence, be disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm upset with myself. I kind of revisit our process. I think back to the announcement of 60 frames per second, and then we weren't shipping 60 frames per second. That was kind of our punch in the chin, rightfully, a couple weeks ago. And then seeing the game come out, and the critical response was not what we wanted. And it's disappointing.
I think that's really interesting for Phill to come out and say, they've disappointed fans, to come out and openly say, they have very much disappointed fans. He's acknowledged that. And for him to say that he's disappointed in himself, I mean, this is so not CEO talk, surely we've seen that before with certain CEOs with that whole strategy of like, oh my God, like I take full responsibility. But like there's such a human side to this, I think. And I think with Phill, it feels hard as very much on his sleeve here. And I think that he's really wanting to just like lay the cards on the table, big time. And for him to mention the whole 60 FPS and then it's brought down to 30 FPS and that's a punch and that's a hit in the chin. I mean, these are all things that are just, he's not here to tell us the reasons why Redfall should have been successful. He's actually just sitting there going, you know what, guys, we fucked up here big time. And for Phill to kind of take it so personally himself, for me, that really set the tone for this entire interview. And that was the moment when I watched this entire thing, I was like, holy shit, okay, we are absolutely seeing a different side here. And again, it does set a new tone when a CEO is going to sit there and say, you know what, we fucked up here. I'm disappointed with myself, with our whole process, and we didn't deliver on certain things. I mean, that makes people really step back and say, you know what? I'm a bit more open to listening now. We're not excusing Redfall, but you know, to see a human side to this whole Redfall process, or at least to see a human side to how Phill is processing all this. I think that's big, man. I honestly think that's big.
And so, kind of pick myself up. What can we learn? How can we get better? One thing I'll fight is kind of what went wrong. There's clearly quality and execution things that we can do. But one thing I won't do is push against creative aspirations of our teams. Then a lot of people will say, hey, you've got teams know how to do one kind of game. Just force them to go do the one kind of game that they have a proven track record for. And I'm just not a believer in that. Maybe that means I'll underdeliver for some of our fans out there. But when a team like Rare wants to do Sea of Thieves, when a team like Obsidian wants to do Grounded, when Tango wants to go do Hi-Fi, when everybody probably thought they were doing Evil Within 3, I want to give the teams the creative platform to go and push their ability, push their aspirations. But I also need to have a great selection of games that are continue to come that surprise and delight our fans. And we under-delivered on that. And for that, I apologize. It's not what I expect, not what I want.
I think that's interesting because I feel like that's almost a bit of a deflection there. It's like, you know, it's like, hey, I'll never stop people in my, you know, studio suite being able to fully try and realize their creative potential or their ability to fully creatively explore options and ideas. That's not what we're talking about here. Do you know, like, that's not what we're talking about. It'd be different if we saw something that was creatively amazing, like, holy shit, it was like trying to revolutionize something, but it was buggy as hell. Redfall doesn't really, I'm sorry, but it's not creatively trying to kick huge goals where it's revolutionizing the the vampire idea in gaming, firstly. And secondly, people aren't annoyed that creatively it's a certain way. They're annoyed because the features are subpar, 30 FPS, the bugginess, the glitchy mess of the entire thing. And the last point that people are annoyed with is, yeah, it's quite barren creatively. So to come out and say, you know, I don't want to get in the way of creative freedom, I think that's kind of ridiculous. And hey, this might be a controversial like point, but when you're in the position of Xbox, I don't think you have the full flex. I don't think you have the ability to fully creatively take huge risks in certain studios that are known and tested to do certain things. Not to say that you can't do anything kind of off the beaten track, and that's not really creative. But in a time where Xbox is so fragile, it makes sense from a business perspective to double down on what you know is good and to double down on things that you know are going to have a higher chance of success when your company is so fragile, you know? And again, not to make it sound like a studio can't take creative risks, but, you know, like, I think Sony is in a better position where it can step away from things that they know could be successful and try really crazy things because they've got a suite of other products that are bolstering up that overall quality. Where with Xbox, you know, each game that they release, all eyes are on them right now for quality. All eyes aren't on them to see what kind of creative ideas that they can bring out that'll like again, like if they brought something out that was creatively amazing, it would help Xbox massively, right? But because they're in such a state, to play it a certain way with studios that they know can deliver certain types of products will increase their chances of success in terms of high quality games. And I think that is a strategy that a company should be trying to implement when they're trying to claw their way back, you know? So I know that's a bit nuanced. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have any creative freedom as a studio, but when you're in the position of Xbox, it needs to be delivering things that they that they know are usually going to have a higher success rate when everyone is looking for just some quality from Xbox, you know?
But, it's ours to deliver.
So following up on that, Phill, so again, I appreciate the transparency on that, but there is a second component to this. And as you may or may not know, I talk to a lot of people in the Xbox community because I want to understand, what people are excited about, what they're frustrated about, things like that. So kind of sticking on this conversation about Redfall, but it's kind of a bigger general question as well. And I kind of want to read directly from this so I make sure I get it crystal clear. So what goes into the decision to delay a game when you launch it feature incomplete or there's a bunch of technical issues? Obviously, we've seen recent
throw the
examples
truth down.
in the industry. Redfall and Halo Infinite are two that stick out in my mind for Xbox. We obviously have seen the review scores. Clearly, we've had the opinion that the game should be delayed. We know every developer wants to ship the best game that they possibly can, but from your level, what's the balance there on when to ship a game that may be feature incomplete or have some technical issues, or just simply give it more time and delay it?
Well, I think those are, and I'm happy to go very deep on this. I think if I think about a team's execution on a game, we had a creative vision, and did we realize that vision through the game that we created?
No.
That's not a delay question if the answer is no. Like, you can't take something that you started on. This isn't a Redfall specific conversation,
right.
But we will build games that review in the high 80s, and we will build games that review in the 60s. I mean, it's just kind of part of being in game publishing. And if you're afraid of that, then you shouldn't be in the entertainment business. You shouldn't be in the games business. That said, every time we deliver something below our own internal expectations that surprises us, we should check our process.
I think that is nonsense. I think that creatively, Paris is asking, at what point do you really want to be delaying a game, right? Like, at what point, what's the thought process there? And Phill starts talking about creative aspiration or the creative vision, right? It has nothing to do with the creative vision here. Anyone internally that would have picked this up would have seen that this is incomplete. Even if a game has completely creatively fallen over, right? The original vision is not there. That's one thing. But if it's not playable, or if it's so buggy, it's just the reviews itself. I've watched 10 different reviews on this, right? And everyone is saying the same thing. Aside from any sort of creative disappointments, the game is just so broken. It's buggy. It's a mess. It's not able to be fully it's not able to be fully played. And then to have 30 FPS instead of 60 FPS, and for Phill to talk about the whole creativity side, that's what we just that's what I'm going to talk about when you start mentioning delaying a game. I think that's the wrong attitude there. It's nothing to do with if you've creatively executed, although we would love to see a game creatively execute when you are going to be delivering something. That's not what we're talking about here.
I don't look at the review scores on Redfall, and there are quality issues, and we're working on those. But I think there's a fundamental piece of feedback that we get that the game isn't realizing the creative vision that it had for its players. That doesn't feel like hey, just delay it. That feels like the game had a goal to do one thing, and when players are actually playing, they're not feeling that thing. They're not feeling the creative execution of the team.
They're not feeling that thing, they're not feeling that whole, why is that person in a T-pose walking past and shit? Why is the enemy just standing there and I can just melee him and the melee's not doing anything? They're just not feeling creative, they're not feeling the creative thing that we tried to do. Nonsense.
When a game needs to be delayed, what we did with Halo, we did with Starfield, we did with Redfall, because the production timeline is saying we have this vision and our production timelines don't get us to the completion of that vision, we do delay games. We do that. Learning about the quality, there are clearly, I've seen them. I know there are bugs in Redfall that's launching. But when I look at like the crash rates on the game, because we get all the telemetry of everything that's happened, it's not out of proportion for a game that has just launched.
Talking about crash data is a very specific thing, I think, for him to try and get around what the actual point is. Crash data, I think, is one thing, but continuing to exist in the game and seeing it to be a buggy mess is a whole different thing, you know? I think, so for him to make that is definitely sidestepping what the major issue is. If the game doesn't crash, but the game itself is just continuously a buggy mess of nonsense, it doesn't matter if you're getting data showing that people aren't that people aren't experiencing crashes. That's just nonsense.
It's kind of in the pocket of what we would expect. That's not to deny any of the animation, streaming of texture bugs, the AI bugs that we've seen. We will go work on those. But when I look at the review scores of this game, it's did we have enough of creative differentiation in our core idea? And did we realize that creative ambition? I'm a huge supporter of Arcane Austin. Their track record is awesome. I love a lot of the great games that they've built. This is one where the team didn't hit their own internal goals when it launched. I think it's maybe a little simplistic to just say, hey, if you would have just delayed it 3 months, the core creative of the game would have delivered on something that was different than what it was. So I look at them in different camps. If there's a production timeline issue, we've been open to delaying. If we just have more bugs than we should have at the end of a game, we're open to delaying. At some point, we have to have a creative vision and put the game out, and reviewers and players will tell us what they think.
I want to say something. I've been stopping this a bit actually, but I just really want to talk about a few things. Firstly, if a game is creatively not hitting all the goals, but it's competent in terms of its bugs and glitches, people will play the game and it won't become a phenomenon, right? It will just be like, okay, it didn't hit, it didn't slap, right? And that will be the thing. So I don't think that's fair to be like, well, you know, it's more about if they hit the creative aspirations. If they didn't hit it, then like that's where we ultimately will talk about delaying a game. This game, Redfall, would have just gone under the radar, right? It would have got a few 7s, maybe an 8. Some Xbox fanboy would have given it an 8.5, and then we would have just continued with our day, right? The idea here is it was such a buggy mess that is the issue why this has become such a thing. It's not like Phil Spencer is not on here talking about Redfall now and spending the entire episode pretty much talking about Redfall. Not because creatively it didn't slap. It's because it became such a buggy meme, you know? And the other thing that he spoke about he loves Arcane's work. I would say that going forward, giving autonomy, full autonomy to Bethesda or any of their studios for that matter, is a thing of the past. It has to be a thing of the past. Bethesda has shown now that it cannot Xbox cannot give them the responsibility of delivering a product without Xbox having to now oversee all the aspects of the creative side as well as the quality side. That's just like has to be going forward. There's no way in hell I see a future now where Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, and everything else that Bethesda's going to bring out in the future, where Xbox isn't intimately part of the process. This has to be a learning curve for them. It has to be. You cannot look at this and go, okay, Redfall was a hiccup or whatever. You know, Phil may have liked their previous games, but you cannot look at this and they have to learn now that going forward that every single title going forward, not only for Bethesda, but maybe other studios in general, they just need to have a bit more of the finger on the pulse. Like they really need to. And any other game now coming out from Bethesda, I'd be so surprised if they had the same level of freedom to do whatever they wanted and deliver a game without Xbox telling them exactly what they can or cannot do going forward.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, of course. Please, Gary.
So I have just a couple of small observations.
I'm going to forward this because he actually talks.
Surprised were you?
He goes on and talks a bit about a previous situation with Phil. So I'm going to miss those 3 minutes and actually go here.
You by the reaction or how, like internally, how much do you know? I feel like this one. People we know the game. It has problems. Like, to what extent was this different from what you expected? And also, and sorry, I know I've been talking a long time. And the second part of that is, when a game is released now, it's not like the old days when a cartridge was shipped in a box and the release of the game was the end of the game's like development cycle. Now it's just the 1.0 release is just a point on the roadmap. To what extent, given that what we're talking about here is not just 30 frames, but design issues, things that may be more conceptual, to what extent do you think, or are you committed to continuing to work on the game and getting it maybe a year down the road, Cyberpunk, No Man's Sky, we've seen these redemptive stories in the past. To what extent do you hold out hope that you can still get the game closer to where you wanted it to be at launch? I know that was a lot.
No, well, at first I thought your words about creative ambition of teams, you especially, I mean, you've lived this, you've done this, are very well said and very spot on. So thank you for that. And that's why I love your voice in this community, because you've created, you've seen kind of ups, and as anybody in the industry, we've all seen downs. And on the score, yeah, we do mock reviews for every game that we launch, and this is like double digits lower than we thought we would be.
That is crazy. So internally, they do mock reviews. And they're double digits down of what they thought Redfall would get. I mean, anybody that is reviewing this internally and giving this double digits above what it actually got reviewed, they need their head checked. Okay, there is something wrong with that. There is something wrong with their process. There is something wrong with maybe the entire structure of how truthful these internal reviewers want to be with Xbox and want to be with Bethesda and Arcane. I mean, that is crazy to hear that a game internally is like getting well reviewed when it's so far from the mark in terms of actual reviewers. That's crazy, man. And this again, this just folds into like, maybe they just have no idea what's going on here. Like Xbox maybe just had no idea what was going on. But surely there's, I mean, these internal testers, we don't know if that's with Bethesda, and Bethesda was wanting to just make sure that those reviews looked good or whatever. I mean, look, we're just assuming here. But for them to be coming in double digits lower, that is crazy. What, it came in at like 80 or 70? You know what I mean? That's just nonsense.
With this game, went through our mock reviews. And that's what's one of the disappointing things. Like we would never strive to launch a game that we thought was going to review in the low 60s. It's not part of our goals. If you look at our review scores over the last year, it's not a defense at all. If you look at the review scores over the last year, I think the teams have done a better job in upping the level of quality of the games that we've shipped. Some of those games first shipped on PlayStation, but still, when I go through the list of the games, you still have to build a game, you still have to ship a game. And this game was significantly below our internal metrics in terms of where it actually reviewed. But that's not on anybody but us. Like, we have to own that. In terms of our commitment to the game, absolutely. The team at Arcane is on taking the near-term feedback. We're still working on the 60 frames per second. We have a good timeline for that. We're committed to getting that done. And we're going to continue to work the game. I think we've shown a commitment to games like Sea of Thieves and like Grounded to continue to go and build games. But I also know that these games are $70, and I'm not gonna I'm gonna take full responsibility for launching a game that needs to be great. I think what I have with the Xbox community, what I am a part of.
Just quickly, we'll continue about for Redfall. For them to continue with Redfall, I think that's just such a stupid idea. I'm sorry. You're dedicating manpower to something that has been unanimously now downvoted. I get the point where people are paid $70, right? Yes, there's definitely an argument of trying to fix this game and get it to a point where people can get their value. But people are never going to get the value out of this game. Creatively, as we've seen, it was pretty barren. But the main thing, as I've said, is the whole bugs and stuff. Let's just say you fix the bugs and all that kind of stuff. You put many months of time and manpower into getting this game to, let's face it, subpar still. I think the community in general, and I mean, I'm sure there's some people out there that, of course, want this game to be worked on, want this game to be brought up to a certain level. I think personally, just let it die, man. Just let it die. Move on to the next thing. No, it's like just take the F and move on. Like, you know, there's a lot of good manpower that you could be putting to Starfield and other titles or whatever that, not Starfield, of course, but whatever Arcane's working on. But it's just in general, under Bethesda, right? Like, just work on titles and move away from a game that has been it's just been an absolute mess. And any sort of manpower that you're dedicating to this for the next 3 to 6 months, I think that's a waste, right? I think that's a waste. And it's just, yeah, I mean, you know, your next title is what people are looking at now. Your next title is what people are going to be caring about far more than if you bring this now finally to 60 FPS. Like, you didn't ship it with 60 FPS. So the moment you didn't do that, that's what's stuck in everyone's mind. It was a buggy, glitchy mess. That's what's stuck in people's minds, you know? Like Cyberpunk 2077, perfect example, right? What do people think about when they think about that game? Do they think about it now being better and they fixed it and whatever? And like, no, people still remember how it launched. Now, I'm not saying that Cyberpunk shouldn't have been fixed. They have a long-term strategy with that and they want to do DLC and whatever. And it's a bigger game in general. It was kind of contender for Game of the Generation before it was released, right? There's a lot more connected with Cyberpunk. And that's like their one game up aside from Witcher that they were working on. So it kind of makes a bit more sense, of course, for them to bring that back. With Redfall, just let it die, man. Just let it die. It's not gonna outpace the reputation it has now. Just move on.
Is a team, there's still questions that pop every so often of how committed is the company to this category? When are we just going to push Xbox out of the market? There's a lot of Twitter firing at Phill right now, which is fine. I'm way overpaid for the role I have anyway. So like, I
think that's interesting. I think for him, he actually says something later too, but I feel like Phill is really feeling quite insecure about his role at the moment. Like legit, like, you know, I think for him to say
that's
that,
my responsibility. But we will remain committed to the game and the players as long as the players want to go play games. And that's my commitment to the community. I'm kind of at a low point right now in terms of my delivery on that commitment to the community. But it very much stays. I want to support the team. I want to support the creative ambitions of the teams.
Yeah, so as I said, like for him to say I'm kind of at a low point now of being able to deliver those things. Honesty, we love the honesty, but there's such a rawness to Phill in this interview. Like there's such a rawness. It's hard not to feel somewhat bad for Phill, right? We're not excusing the performance of Redfall. We're not excusing, you know, how Xbox has delivered, you know, how it's tried to compete in this space in the last 3 years with this latest generation, in the last 10 years in general. But man, you got to feel bad in some respect. On a human level, Phil Spencer is definitely, I think, in a state right now where he feels like his days are numbered, and he actually makes a comment later on about that.
And I want to support the players, and we let a lot of people down this week with the launch of the game. But we will continue to strive on. You have to, right? That's what creative is about.
No, you absolutely do. And to kind of start transitioning this into hopefully more happy news, but I do want to address something, you know, around that. Obviously today you announced the Xbox Game Showcase, which will be happening this June. And obviously there's going to be a lot of new reveals and surprises that come out of that, which is great. But I am going to bring it back again to another common theme that I do hear through the community. And I've actually said this to you in the past, but it's about communication coming from Xbox. I do feel back in 2021, you did a fantastic job with communication, which arguably has been the best year during this current generation of Xbox. Obviously, we know that 2022 was a light year for Xbox as far as releasing titles.
Oh, yeah.
Now, last year, during the showcase, you had the 12-month plan. You didn't necessarily deliver on all the games coming.
No, we didn't deliver.
12
Not
months.
necessarily.
Oh,
we didn't deliver.
Yeah,
Harris is dealing some hard
my point
cards.
of bringing that up is this, you know, talking about some of the lessons learned that come out of that. And obviously, even with not every game making the 12 months, going back to, again, you know, game development, things happen. Things aren't always going to come on time. But as we go into this showcase, one of the common themes that I hear is I don't know enough about things that you've announced in the past, like even more specifically going back to 2020. And I'll just run down a quick list of it. Vowed, Perfect Dark, Everwild, which is something we really don't know that much about. Fable, State of Decay 3, Contraband. Obviously, we've seen a little more in Hellblade 2. You know, we have studios like In Exile and Compulsion Games that we know are working on things, but we haven't seen any real updates on that. So I titled all my questions Balance and Communication, because even in this, it's like, what is that balance on when you show something that you know is going to be years down the road, and kind of that cadence of providing updates along the way. And obviously, as we go into this showcase, not that you need to reveal anything specific here, but what were some of those lessons learned from last year's showcase that you'll bring into this one?
Before he answers, I think that's such a good point. I think Paris definitely delivered. I mean, it was a harsh question. It was a harsh bunch of questions, but it was respectful. And I think a lot of people like myself thought we would see an avalanche of games. I mean, the amount of studios that Phil Spencer and Xbox, of course, has purchased over the years, to see such light showings and offerings for. I mean, there was no AAA first-party game released last year. There was some games that were released that weren't AAA that were first-party for Xbox, but there was no AAA showing. Where is the avalanche of games? I mean, the entire strategy has been very much about, let's buy as many, studios that are up and coming, or they're already doing great things, and we're going to deliver a lot of quality. Some of those studios are years ago that they were purchased. Years ago. I mean, yes, some games take 6 years to make, some games take 3 years to make, right? Some games take longer, some take less, right? Where is that avalanche of games? I mean, that is such a good question, because I mean, it's been so long now since we've felt like that momentum of heaps of games were coming through Xbox. I can't remember the last time where I felt like, holy shit, there's so much coming out for Xbox, legit. And for them to double down and pay for all these studios and bring them under the umbrella of Xbox Studios, man, I mean, I thought by now they would be the ones that would be dominating, not the quality not the quality so much, but at least in the landscape of gaming, in the first party space, they would be the ones that would be delivering so much first party that it would be outpacing or outperforming whatever PlayStation was going to be offering.
Yeah,
but I guess not.
You might try to get me on positive. I'm not in positive mode this week, so I'll apologize for staying in kind of cranky mode. But
bad Phil.
In terms of lessons learned, and I'll even go back to the Redfall videos on IGN of showing videos of the game running at 60 on PC. At the point knowing that the game was going to run 30 frames per second at launch on console. Like, we have to be transparent about what we're showing, that what we're showing is representative of what our console customer, our most committed customer to our brand, financially committed, what they're going to see, what they're going to play, and that transparency just has to get better. And I'm not pointing at anybody but myself, right? I guess at some point I will have enough knocks against me that it's somebody else here.
I think that's huge. That was that's the moment. I think there's going to be enough knocks against me that someone else is here. Yeah, I think Phil also knows that his days are numbered. I'll get to the communication thing in a second, but I think this entire demeanor from Phil, the way he's answering questions, the way that he's presenting Xbox, presenting himself, talking about his own thought processes and how he's been disappointed about things. This comes, I think, from a point where Phil is truly, truly feeling like, I think the Phil dynasty is coming to an end. I think he knows that. His last major time or moment or opportunity for redemption is Starfield. If Starfield is like, okay, let's just say it's free of bugs, right? It's perfect. There's no bugs. But the game itself isn't great. It gets a few 7s. It gets like maybe an 8. That is also enough for Phil, I think, to throw it, like for the time of Phil to be over. The only thing I see Phil staying in this role is if Starfield is an absolute banger. The Xbox showcase at E3 is packed full of really exciting titles that get Xbox part of the conversation a bit more again. And people are ultimately a lot more excited to see what Xbox has in store. But I think he knows his days are numbered. And when you're making comments like that from the CEO, doesn't instill confidence, but it also gives people, I think, a rough time frame in their mind. You know, I mean, each person's going to have a different time frame, but for me, when you start saying these things, it looks like it's like a 12-month thing, 6 months to 12 months. I mean, again, I'm just guessing here, but that's I think Phil's either had some internal talks, or he knows the writing's on the wall, and that's why he's making those kind of comments.
But you know, that I think it's transparency in what we're building, what our aspiration is for the game, what it's going to look like, what the features are. And it drives me crazy when we self-inflicted wounds of kind of putting things out there of communication that's confusing or misleading about what the actual end product is going to be. So you can try to take me to positive space. I'm just not in that headspace right now. That said, when I go and I look at Showcase, and I'm not going to try to oversell Showcase here, because if I were on the other side of watching this, it's like, hey, after Redfall, I'm going to put my hands on the controller, and that's what's going to take to kind of prove to me. But that's not what Showcase is. So
I think that's it. I think that was a mistake to be like, I'm not gonna talk about how good Showcase is going to be. Like, it'll be all right, I guess. You know, come on, Phil. I know you're down in the dumps, man. But I mean, that is the E3 that week is still the mecca of gaming. You know, like we want to feel like that's going to be something really exciting. It's going to be something that we should be really excited for. And that is the moment for redemption. Not necessarily for you if that's not something that you want to tie into this message, but at least the redemption for Xbox. So to come out and be like, oh, maybe there'll be some cool thing. I'm not going to I'm not going to make it sound great. I mean, come on, man. You know what I mean?
I'm very enthusiastic about Showcase.
Oh, whoa, he's enthusiastic now.
Announce some things that people haven't seen, some new games. We're going to give updates to some of the things that were on your list. The other thing that gets me really excited is when I look forward over the next quarters, which has always been my focus of how do we get a big game out every quarter at quality, that things are lining up finally after some of the slowdown through COVID. I'm tired of talking about that. But I can now see that we've got games coming every quarter that I think will surprise and delight our customers. We still have to deliver on the creative. We still have to deliver on the technical. Not every game we ship is for everybody. We know that. Like, I'm not trying to build the one game to rule them all. We will have different creative takes and we have a very diverse portfolio when you think about the stuff that Microsoft Game Studios builds.
For sure, it does.
But I like that. I think for what we're trying to do as Xbox, which isn't to mimic any of the other platforms out there, it's create our own brand and identity. The diversity of what we build, hopefully, will end up being a strength. But we have to do it at quality. We have to do it on time, and we have to show people what they're actually going to see. We have to show gameplay, and I think I'm kind of beyond that. Like, we've got to put great games in the hands of our players. There's nothing else.
I think that's important. I mean, gaming is such a space where like when you see a movie trailer, you can usually see, like, you can see who's in the movie, you can see what it's going to be about, and you can see whatever, right? Gaming sometimes, not always, sometimes delivers graphics through trailers that are just not true, like Watch Dogs, for instance. It just delivers, or it promises features that are not in there. So it's very different to movie trailers, where movie trailers, like, it's just kind of, if you don't like the movie, that's one thing, but there's no like technical aspect, or there's no graphical aspect. The kind of CGI or whatever, or the cast, and it's all very much packaged in that trailer, right? If you like the movie, that's one thing, but you don't go there and you're not hoodwinked in like very different CGI, or, you know what I mean? Where with gaming, it has the ability, and it's kind of capitalized on that ability to present things through trailers that aren't actually the case. You know, that has happened in the past, and it'll continue to happen. So it's good to see Phill want to own that a bit and talk about how they really want to be showing what they're going to be, hopefully, they want to be showing in the future games and what they actually look like, and hopefully in the trailers and talking about the features, actually delivering those features, right? Because that's now a big point for Xbox after this whole 30 FPS thing. the big thing. Halo Infinite, when they were talking about the complete package, and then they separated it, and they didn't do multiplayer and campaign at the same time, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's now becoming an increasing issue for Xbox, I think, delivering those features and products as they said that they were going to do it.
If I could follow up on that, and I apologize, I do not want to dominate the conversation, but I
dominate the conversation, Barrett. Get out of here.
Follow up on the point of everything that you just said, and I'll take it from a personal standpoint. I've been a big believer in what Xbox has been building since about 2016, right? Xbox Play Anywhere, Game Pass, what you're doing with the Series X and S, just the cloud initiative, everything. I love all the services and the marketing message that you present to the community. But to your point, and for me personally, I have Game Pass. My kids play it. We all love it. But you even mentioned, delivering quality experiences every quarter, things like that. That's the sentiment that we get from the community right now. That's the sentiment that I even have of, it's great to talk about these things. I think we've been talking about them ad nauseum. It's like, when are we going to get to that point of actually delivering these experiences? Like I just ran down those games. There's 20 something studios. Forget Activision. Xbox Game Studios, what it is today. There's more than enough studios and titles out there that we're all anticipating. And I think that is the common frustration that I see out there from people, that it's like, we're tired of hearing, wait till next year. And I know you know that. But
yeah, I know.
Big time.
I know. And
Yeah.
This year started out well.
Yeah.
I thought Developer Direct was received well. The team did a really good job, I thought, with the messaging around to your point, around setting expectation. And I will even say, yes, I'm rooting for the home team here, but I'll say over-delivering on expectations of that show versus what it was. I think the drop of Hi-Fi to say, hey, if you've got Game Pass, you don't even have to buy the game. Like, just go click. People loved Hi-Fi. Something we don't talk a lot about that same month, Age 2 on console shipped. Truth be told, more people are playing a bunch of people are playing Hi-Fi and Age 2, but Age 2 actually has more players right now. But all the fanfare goes to the highly rated kind of new Hi-Fi. Get that. I know the review scores on Minecraft Legends. Minecraft, I think, always reviews somewhere kind of different than the top. But if I look at the reaction, I think we've already had over 3 million people playing. I saw, like, its launch week, it was the #1 retail game on the Switch in Japan, which isn't always where Microsoft sits.
That's so true.
In terms of sales. So I feel like momentum is building, and then something like Redfall happens, and the Xbox community should demand a lot from us as a team.
That's true. I think that as much as everyone knew that Xbox was in third place, I'm apart from Halo Infinite, which Halo Infinite wasn't like a buggy mess, really. It was more just, it was an underwhelming, console seller. It was an underwhelming console seller. But for the last, several months, really, we haven't seen a catastrophe for Xbox. They've just been strongly in third place, and there was momentum there. And, Minecraft Legends and stuff, like, there was things that were coming out, and Starfield was in the future. Like, there was things that was definitely building some sort of momentum. Not momentum to take second place. Let's be honest here. Okay? It wasn't going to take second place, but enough to feel like they were kind of hard at work in the trenches, trying to do their own thing. And he's right in saying that Redfall just kind of, it took the wings away from that momentum, and it really kind of just made everyone, it was so quick, the conversation of, oh, the Activision thing didn't work out. Oh, okay. Oh, shit, Redfall. Like, everyone started talking about Redfall. That was it. You know what I mean? Like, it went from, oh, fuck, I wonder if the Activision deal's going to go through. Oh, maybe Phil's future is a bit in jeopardy. Holy shit, Redfall is the biggest dumpster fire ever. Like, that's what people were saying on Twitter. Phil's finished, like, it just became this whole next level, and to think that a massive $69 billion deal crashing became second news to Redfall. And it kind of did. And yeah, Activision, the whole thing maybe happened a week before or so, but like, it's close enough to feel like those could have been competing conversations, but like, everything's about Redfall now, Yeah.
Where you sit inside of Microsoft, we've got the resources to do better. 2022 was, as you said, a very light year, I think is what you said. I might have other words for it. And then 2023, we started well, and this was a knockback. But it's our job to go and deliver on the next games. I can only look forward, right? I can sit here and wallow in my own frustration. But all I can do is say, I'm going to do better tomorrow than I did yesterday, and continue to support the teams and continue to grow. But yeah, I think it is ours to prove that. I can say now, and everybody can already stop, I don't want to hear what Phill has to say about the future, and I kind of fully respect that point of view, that we've got Starfield coming, we've got Forza coming, we've got Hellblade coming, like we've got collections of games. I'm seeing very good builds of Avowed and stuff, like we're in, like I can see it. But until you have a controller in your hand and you're smiling from playing our games, none of my words should matter.
Shout out to Honey for spot.
All right, and then this just happened. Then the ad roll happens for like 2 minutes, right? So after that, it just continues to go on the from the episode I did yesterday. So I'll play this in the background. So look, I really wanted to play that today because I do think that is going to be the most important interview that Phill Spencer's ever given. Everyone will look back at this interview and see. I think a lot of people will see it as a pivotal moment for Phill. It might be the moment where Phill is conceding. He seems very defeated, right? He's extremely defeated in this interview. You can see it, his words, but also his demeanor. I just think that I appreciate the honesty, though. You know, it's important to see CEOs talk like as true as as honest as they can, right? Yeah, maybe there's also some deflecting in that, and there's some excuses and whatever. But it's definitely a moment where I think Phill is just wanting to have the most heart-to-heart a CEO could have with his audience. You know? Like, it's definitely the moment where I felt Phill was like, hey, cards on the table, let's take the armor off. Like, we're in a really bad place right now. And I think Phil's in a bit of a bad place, and he just wanted to have an honest discussion. And I don't think that these interviewers were expecting this, right? Like, I think they started off really strong in terms of being like really fun and bouncy. And then as it continued, everyone just kind of settled into the environment that it was, you know. And just back on that point about, you know, Redfall news competing with Activision news. I mean, that's huge in itself. And when Starfield comes out, and if there's any issues with that, it'll just take the gaming news by storm, because everyone will now associate Starfield's failure with Phil's failure. That's the problem there. It's not going to be Xbox's failure as much as it will be, but everyone now is seeing that Phil's possibility of continuing his reign is getting chipped away. And if Starfield fails, then I think it's done. Like, I really do think it's done. And I feel for him. That honesty's great. But the truth is, Xbox has got here naturally based on the decisions it's made, right? It's wanted to do multiple services that it offered. And on paper, that sounds great, right? The cloud initiative, Game Pass, PC, every first-party game being able to be played on PC, and also being, also having the Xbox, right? But I can't help but wonder, having all these different strategies and whatever, has that taken their full focus away from console? Or did they just feel like they can't compete? As Phill continues on in this interview, he does say he doesn't see a world where they can fully compete with Sony. But I wonder if he thought that at the start of the generation, or he's just now feeling that around 3 years in. I wonder if they mustered all their strength and just put it all into the idea of the console truly competing, you know, really doubling down on quality, really making sure that they had a first-party game of high, or at least decently high quality, coming out every quarter or every 6 months. I wonder if that would have a tangible effect in the future of Xbox, in the future of Phill. Like, it's all about Phill right now, you know? It's all about what's going to happen with Phill. And that's why I wanted to do this with you guys today again, because usually I wouldn't, watch a 40-minute interview with you, part 1 and part 2. But again, we will look back at this interview and remember this as the day that Phill was super honest with us, and it probably marks the end of Phil Spencer. And that sounds harsh, but I think it does mark the end of Phil Spencer. And you know what? He'll go on to do some great things, I'm sure, right? But I don't think he'll be around for Xbox in the next 12 months. And as he said, also, you know, he needs this to be, even if Starfield is 11 out of 10, it doesn't move the needle in the console wars. It just doesn't happen. So guys, that's it today. Really, I just wanted to play that for you. I just wanted to play with you. Now, usually I wouldn't be so ignoring of the chat, but there was a lot to do today. $2 Gains Gaming Ginger, thanks so much for your $2. I appreciate you, my friend. Seems he just wants to do good by everyone. I think Phil's being honest here. I think Phil's wanting to be genuine here. But yeah, I just think it's dire for Xbox at the moment, and Starfield represents where the direction of Phill goes and where the direction of Xbox goes. So guys, I will be a lot more attentive to chat next time. My apologies, but there was a lot to get through today. You know, this was a half an hour video plus my meaningless commentary. You need to put that through too. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. I love you, appreciate you. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching and commenting. Like and subscribe, please. Press the bell notification or whatever. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time, all right? You guys have a great weekend, and I will see you guys very soon. Phill out. Phill out.